Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.
Hare Krishna. I am Rajarsi Dasa. Welcome to Hare Krishna today. On today's program, I have a special guest with me. His Grace Lalita Krishna Dasa, a disciple of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Lalita Krishna Prabhu, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We're actually in the hills of West Virginia. It's a community called New Brindavan. A very beautiful setting here. And Lalita Krishna Prabhu, perhaps you can tell us something. Srila Prabhupada influenced people all over the planet to take up this part of Krishna consciousness or spiritual life. Perhaps you can tell us something about your origin, what part you come from, and about your life before becoming a devotee.
Well, I was born in Malaysia originally, born and raised in Malaysia. But during my school days, I would go to Singapore for my vacation about 3 times a year. And when I finished my education, I moved to Singapore with my family. And that was where I first met the Hare Krishna devotees. Before I met the Hare Krishna devotees, I was just living a very ordinary life, born in a Chinese family. But I was interested in yoga.
Tell us, what was your family origin? Were they from originally China or Singapore or what?
Well, my parents were born in Singapore, but their parents came from China originally.
Okay.
Yes. And my life was just very ordinary like everybody else.
So what made that transition? What attracted you to Krishna consciousness?
Well, when I got up to the age of about 20, 21, around that age, I came across some books on yoga, and I became very interested in yoga. I started practicing Hatha yoga, and I actually started going to the Ramakrishna mission. And as a matter of fact, I was involved with them for about a year before I came across the Hare Krishna devotees.
Okay, tell us something about, what aspect of the Krishna consciousness movement or Srila Prabhupada's teaching, what aspect of this teaching attracted you? I mean, there are so many different aspects, what you found that was better than maybe what you were exposed to in religion prior to this?
Well, what really attracted me to Krishna consciousness was the completeness of the philosophy, the purity of the teachings. The philosophy of Krishna consciousness actually explains in great detail about who is God, what is God, and what is our relationship with Him, and how do we actually develop love for Him, and what is this material world, and what are the living entities. Everything that you want to know about this material world and the spiritual world is explained in the Krishna consciousness philosophy. And besides that, there is also a scientific process that is contained within the philosophy as to how you can actually make progress in your spiritual life.
Did you find something difficult about adopting, because right now you're a full-time practitioner, following all the principles. When you first came in touch with this, did you have a problem like giving up or following the regulative principles like we follow? No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex, adopting the chanting of 16 rounds. Tell us something about how you encountered this. Were you inspired to attempt this, or did you have problems in the beginning?
Well, I think like everybody else, I had problems in the beginning. Uh, but I was very determined to um, to follow Prabhupada's instructions, and I tried very hard. Even though I failed several times, I would every time I failed, I would pick myself up and kept on going. And eventually, I was able to just follow the principles and the instructions quite naturally.
Mm. Did you did you ever meet Srila Prabhupada? Where were you initiated and so on? Did you have any encounter with Srila Prabhupada?
Yes, Srila Prabhupada came to Malaysia in 1971, late 71, around September 1971, and that was when I first met him. And he was there for about a week in Malaysia. And after Malaysia, he went to Indonesia, to Jakarta. And I also went to Jakarta with some other devotees and spent some time, spent 2 or 3 days there with Srila Prabhupada. And then later on, Srila Prabhupada went back to India. And I went back to Singapore for about a month. And after about a month, I also went to India and spent about 3 years there.
Okay.
India.
Where was that in India? Where did you stay?
I first stayed in Calcutta, and that was when Srila Prabhupada was there when I first arrived in Calcutta. And from Calcutta I went to Bombay, and from Bombay I went to Hyderabad. From Hyderabad I went to Vrindavan. And during this time I had several occasions interacted with Srila Prabhupada.
You have any specific that stands out in your mind about, your encounter with him? You would like to say something about your meeting him or your encounter with him?
Yes. When I went to Bombay from Calcutta, Srila Prabhupada saw me, and he was very happy to see me in Bombay, and he spoke to me like as if he had met me, like as if he was a very old friend of mine.
Okay.
He just looked at me and smiled and said, "Oh, you are here, Lalita Krishna." I said, "Come on in." And he was very happy. He was very, very down to earth. And in Vrindavan, at one time in Vrindavan, when he had just come back from the West, I saw him at the Radha Damodar temple, and that was in 1972, I think. And when he first arrived at the Damodar temple, he sat outside his room on the veranda overlooking the courtyard. And he instructed all his disciples to come before him and bow down, and he would garland each of his disciples. And I did the same thing. I came before him and bowed down, and he gave me a garland, put a garland on my neck. And as I looked up, he was also looking down at me, and I looked up, and for about a minute, or maybe less than a minute, our eyes, we kind of look at each other's eyes, and at that point, I could see there was so much love and compassion emanating from those eyes, and that really touched my heart. That was actually a very amazing experience. After that, I just felt like Srila Prabhupada he has got nothing but love for all of us.
How do you see Srila Prabhupada's impact or influence on people like all over the planet? He influenced the lives of so many people. What do you attribute to him, people becoming attracted to him and dedicating or devoting their life to him? What do you think was responsible for such a radical move in the lives of so many people?
Well, in the beginning years, not only did Prabhupada give us a very pure and complete philosophy, it was actually Prabhupada himself personally that attracted a lot of people. Prabhupada was a very, very beautiful person. And the way he dealt with people, it was very, very loving way of dealing with people. And there's something very attractive about Srila Prabhupada. His personality was just effulgent, and he was very humble. He was never on a, he was never on a big ego trip that he's a big guru or anything like that. He was very accessible, and he looked like a very saintly person, very saintly person, and that attracted a lot of people in the beginning. But later on, when they looked into the philosophy and actually applied the philosophy to their lives, they found that what he's giving them is the real thing. It's actually a bona fide spiritual science that will actually enable you to understand who you really are and who is God and what is your relationship with God.
I mean, the world is in such a chaotic situation today. What do you think about this situation that the world is in with, I mean, there's so much chaos. I mean, political, economic, crisis, natural disasters also. So how do you see this situation? Because sometimes people tend to, like, the finger goes up, well, if there's a God, what is he doing with us, So how does Krishna consciousness philosophy, see this, or this situation in the world today?
Well, the world situation today looks very bad, and it is only going to get worse. And Prabhupada has always said, until and unless they turn to God, they sincerely and seriously turn to God, there is really no hope. And Krishna consciousness is, without a doubt, the answer to all our problems. And as far as how much Krishna consciousness has influenced this world, I can only see what is going around in America today. Here in America, we find that more and more young people are becoming very much influenced by this Krishna consciousness philosophy. Directly or indirectly, they are influenced in some ways. And also a lot of young professionals from India, are also becoming very influenced by this philosophy. And it is only a matter of time before more and more people wise up and see the benefit of this Krishna consciousness.
So you think that the actions of people is responsible for the chaotic situation? You think it's people due to people's lack of spiritual vision, their lack of knowledge, that is, they're performing activities that bring about the reaction?
Yes, definitely. Because when we don't understand who we are or what we are, who is God and what is our relationship with God, then we cannot but perform activities that is not conducive to our spiritual health. And any activity that is performed that is not conducive to our spiritual health is bound to have some kind of reaction. And it is accumulation of all these reactions to all these different godless activities that is the cause of all these problems that we are having today. So what is really lacking in this world today is simply God consciousness. Without God consciousness, there is no way you can have peace in this world. There is no way you can have unity, peace, and without that, there cannot be any kind of happiness or economic progress for that matter.
Can you tell us something about your personal experience with knowing Krishna, you know, as God the Supreme, and what impact or how has that influenced your life as an individual in terms of your peace or your composure or your enlightenment? Tell us something about your encounter with Krishna, and because how many years ago that was since you devotee now? I mean, you've dedicated your life that much time. So tell us something about that experience.
Okay. Well, I have been involved with this Krishna consciousness now for about 41 years. I joined the devotees in 1970. And after all these years, I am at that stage right now where I'm actually experiencing the reality of Krishna almost every day of my life. Maybe not throughout the whole day, but in some part of the day, every day of my life, I do experience the reality of Krishna. Now, Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita that this Krishna consciousness is the perfection of religion because it enables one to see the self, and it is joyfully performed. And this is something that I'm experiencing every day. In the morning when I get up, I go to the morning program and do my meditation and say my Gayatri mantra, and I can actually perceive the reality of myself as a spirit soul, and I can also experience the reality of Krishna's energy everywhere. So you know, it is real. It is the ultimate reality. It is the reality that we are all searching for. And I'm experiencing it every day, and I'm feeling very excited at this stage because I can only see a very bright future ahead of me.
If you have to communicate this for someone, because people in general, everyone in this world, Srila Prabhupada said they're looking for two things. Everybody want to be happy and they want to be free from suffering. So, but it seems for some people, if you tell them that take up this practice of chanting, then people would, you know, sometimes they think that this is too simplistic. Can just a simple thing like that make me happy? So, I mean, you know, how would you try to, you know, if you have to speak to a new person, you know, how do you try to communicate the need to apply yourself to this chanting?
Well, in the early years, Prabhupada came out with a small booklet, a small pamphlet. I think the title of it was Krishna, the Reservoir of All Pleasure.
Yeah, I know that. I still distribute that.
Yeah.
Krishna, the Reservoir of All Pleasure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there Prabhupada explains that somebody asked him this question, what is the meaning of life? And Prabhupada said the meaning of life is pleasure. That everybody is looking for pleasure. And the reason why we are all looking for pleasure is because by nature, the spirit soul is full of pleasure. And the spirit soul is full of pleasure. This pleasure is actually coming from this loving relationship with Krishna. But now in this material world, being separated from Krishna under the covering of this material energy, we have forgotten our relationship with Krishna, and we have also forgotten who we are. But because the soul is by nature is full of pleasure, we are trying to how do I explain it? The intrinsic pleasure of the soul, if I can put it that way, or the innate pleasure of the soul, is trying to manifest itself through the medium of the physical body.
Okay.
And it takes the form of sense pleasure. In other words, sense pleasure is actually a perverted reflection of spiritual pleasure. And if somebody does not understand this philosophy, or is ignorant of the fact that he is a spirit soul, then naturally he will try to look for pleasure through the senses, the physical senses.
Contacting
Yeah,
objects.
Exactly. And from experience, we know that sensual pleasure is temporary. Not only is it temporary, to obtain the pleasure, you have to go through so much trouble. And then when you actually experience the pleasure is temporary. And ultimately, as we try to enjoy more and more the senses, in the end, the senses actually turn against us in a form of old age and disease.
So there's more disappointment.
So that's right.
You won't be able to continue.
Exactly. Not only that, it's actually painful. It's actually painful. It's like somebody who is trying to enjoy, say, carnal pleasure, for instance. Okay, and he's trying to enjoy carnal pleasure, and he's getting so much pleasure from his genital, but in the end, he comes down with all kinds of diseases, and that which is the source of his pleasure becomes the source of his pain. And that applies to every senses. It applies to the entire physical body. The more we try to enjoy this body, in the end, the more we will suffer.
And we become very attached also to the object.
Exactly, and we become very attached to the sense pleasure. And all this attachment is stored in the mind. And when the body grows old, and the senses are weak, and we are not able to enjoy this pleasure anymore, but the desires are still in the mind. And these desires will again carry the soul into another body. So the soul goes on from one body to another body to another body, futilely trying to search for this pleasure. But if one understands that he is actually the spirit soul, and his pleasure is actually coming from having a loving relationship with Krishna, and if he turns to Krishna and look for this pleasure, then he will actually find this pleasure within himself. It's like the story about this musk deer that I heard.
Okay.
Right? This musk deer, he carries this musk within his own body, and the fragrance of this musk is so wonderful, so amazingly attractive, that this deer, throughout his whole life, he's looking for this scent, not realizing that the musk is within himself.
Okay. So the Supreme Lord, who is a reservoir for all pleasure, he can be found right within us, but we are going with our senses externally, trying to search for it in objects.
Yes, yes. We are actually searching for Krishna ultimately, because Krishna is the reservoir of all pleasure, the source of all pleasure. And we are all looking for Krishna in the ultimate sense, except that, most people don't realize that. Because ultimately in life, what do we actually look for? We look for wealth, we look for beauty, we look for knowledge, we look for all these things. And all these things are within Krishna to an infinite degree. So in the ultimate sense, we are looking for Krishna. But unfortunately, most people don't realize that. And they're trying to search for this in this illusion, in this illusory world.
So people in general, they have a little problem with applying themselves. Before we conclude, perhaps you can suggest something for our viewing audience. What would you like to practically recommend or prescribe that people, if they adopt some simple thing, it can help them to bring about a change in their life? What would you like to recommend for our viewing audience?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to have some understanding about the futility of trying to find happiness in this material world through sense pleasure. And based on this understanding, have a little bit of faith in God, and understand, look into the philosophy of this Krishna consciousness, and take up this chanting seriously. You have got nothing to lose. Just take up this chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Take up this chanting seriously every day on a regular basis, and these changes will definitely come. I have no doubt about that.
Okay, Lalita Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much for being on the program. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
And so I'm Rajarsi Dasa saying Hare Krishna. And do join us again next week for another presentation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.